It's her birthday when the clock strikes 12. Amy shares that she had planned to go out with friends for drinks tonight. But before she goes out, Seth has a surprise on his own. He asks Amy to stand by and surprises her with a customized cake. Later, the morgue manager named Holden notices the two employees coming toward his office. The disabled manager then greets Amy a happy birthday. Holden exclaims that he took part in the surprise and joked about how Seth kept going about it for a month. With Amy's shift ending, she asked if she could get her phone back. Holden keeps all the phones locked up in a safe due to the morgue's regulations. Afterward, a phone call came in. The morgue crew is notified that about 9 fresh bodies are on the way to be embalmed. The cadavers belong to a suspect and his victims of a recent massacre that occurred in a hotel nearby. With their hands full and with nobody else around, Amy decided to cancel her plans of going out and help with the workload. Amy phones her friend and calls for a rain check. Meanwhile, 2 paramedics try to resuscitate the serial killer of the morbid carnage that occurred a few nights back. But no matter how hard they tried, the man had no sign of a pulse and was flatlined. A bit later, the ambulance arrives, and Seth reviews the document of the dead. Turns out, the name of the killer is Jacob Goodnight, also known as the God's Hand Killer. He was responsible for a series of murders that haunted the city for years. Jacob was only recently caught after he supposedly died after killing 9 people. Seth and Amy are tasked to carry the body and record their findings in the autopsy area. They later measured Jacob's height at an outstanding 7 feet tall. Late into the night, Seth volunteers to work on the bodies alone and tells Amy to go ahead. On the way out, Amy is amazed to discover that Holden has permitted her friends, Tamara, Kayla, Carter, and her brother Will to host a birthday party in the morgue. Seth arrives a bit later, and everyone grabs a drink. Will tells Seth to keep away from Amy at the party, believing Amy deserves better. This prompted Seth to return to work. Amy gets pissed when Will expresses his displeasure about her dropping out of medical school to work at the morgue. She soon follows Seth, and it gets awkward for the others. Fascinated by death and serial killers, Tamara leaves with Carter to look for Jacob's body. They soon find it, and the experience of being with the God's Hand Killer arouses Tamara. The two had a little bit of fun when suddenly, Jacob awakens. The lights went out, and the couple freaked. Tamara lights a match, and Jacob Goodnight emerges in the background. The serial killer grabs Carter while Tamara escapes. The 7-foot cutthroat searches the room and begins sobbing when he sees his adoptive mother's lifeless body. She was responsible for torturing and brainwashing Jacob back when he was young. In an unfortunate incident, Jacob killed his mother. Nonetheless, Jacob loved her very much. After killing Carter, Jacob then outfits himself with the burned victim's mask and several tools before cutting the building's power. Amy, Will, and Kayla hear Tamara scream and proceed to look for her. Separated from the others, Holden screams at the top of his lungs when he encounters Jacob. He tried to get away, but the big man used a hook chain to capture him. Meanwhile, Amy and the others soon discover Carter's corpse. Upstairs, Seth has no clue about the horrifying events. He was cleaning the morgue table when the power went out. He grabs a flashlight and nonchalantly looks for the others as he passes by a dark corridor. 1 floor below, Amy, Will, and Kayla discover Holden gravely injured. The young morgue technician tries to help, but it isn't long before Holden breathes his last. Eventually, Seth discovers the main power switch was tampered with. He then hears a noise echo through the dark hallways and begins to investigate what caused the noise. Back at the Amy's group, they continue to scour the area when they stumble upon a bloodied Tamara. The poor girl then reveals that she was messing around with Carter at the morgue when Jacob came back to life. The siblings and Kayla couldn't believe what they were hearing. They had no choice but to trust their friend since there wasn't any logical explanation for what happened to Carter. On the other hand, Seth was trying to get inside the autopsy room. His flashlight falls, and when he picks it up, it illuminates Jacob's large and sinister figure. The adrenaline kicks in, and the serial killer tries to take a swing at Seth. Luckily, Seth manages to evade and run away. The group of 4 tried to take the staircase and escape, but the door was locked. Anxiety sets in when suddenly Seth appears and opens the door from the other side. He regroups with Amy and the others and confirms that Jacob Goodnight is alive. Jacob smashes through the small door window and grabs Seth's jacket without warning. Will immediately helps Seth lose his jacket just in time before the giant sadist breaks the door. Kayla runs away first, followed by the siblings, then Tamara and Seth. In a state of panic, they ran off in different directions in the maze of dim-lit hallways. Will ends up dragging Amy into some sort of boardroom. As an older brother, it was understandable that Will was overprotective with his sister. But for Amy, it was rather selfish to leave the others while they hid in safety. While Amy and Will hid in a room, Kayla ended up locking herself in a comfort room. At the same time, Tamara and Seth try different doors and see if it leads somewhere. Kayla realizes that it was her friends trying to open the door. She was about to open it and reunite with them when suddenly Jacob grabbed her from behind. Using his enormous strength, the serial killer quickly chokes Kayla with one hand. He had a firm grip on her throat that ended up destroying her esophagus, causing her to vomit tons of blood. Then a flashback from Jacob's previous murdering spree. His mother tried to convince him that he was doing God's will by killing the sinful young folks. His to-be victim was trying to say otherwise, that God condemns mindless and brutal murder. Jacob was in conflict with himself. He keeps on remembering his mother's inflicted torment and constant reminder to kill the sinful. He strips the woman's clothes off, exposing the large cross tattoo on her back. Back at the present, Jacob punches a mirror, unable to cope with what's right or wrong. Years of brainwashing from his abusive mother were taking its toll, but somehow it still overpowers his will. Kayla ends up dying in a position similar to that of Jesus nailed to the cross, with her palms bloodied like how Jesus' palms were. Meanwhile, Seth and Tamara manage to find the exit, but it is heavily barricaded. The two retrace their steps and found another way out. They discover an unlocked door and get in to hide. Tamara wants to stick with Seth, but since there's only a small space to hide, they end up hiding in different spots. Tamara hides behind a shelf while Seth hides under an operating table. Not soon after, Jacob comes in with a spiked machete on hand. The big man scans the room, looking for his prey. Coincidentally, the siblings, Amy and Will, are on the other side of the room, which is only separated by a glass panel. They manage to duck just in time for Jacob to look in their direction. On the other hand, Tamara shakes uncontrollably as Jacob's heavy steps near. The serial killer eventually discovers Tamara. Amy tries to distract Jacob by shouting at him to save her friend. Tamara uses the opportunity to run away but fails miserably. As Tamara runs away, Jacob simply swings the machete in hand, slices the poor girl's neck, and blood splatters everywhere. It wasn't long before Tamara's untimely demise. Jacob just stood in front of his victim, savoring the kill, while Amy looked at the serial killer with contempt from the other side of the glass panel. A quick thinking Will then uses the opportunity to break the other window using a chair and signals Seth to jump out. Seth makes it on the other side of the room, and they make a break for it. Using his unearthly strength, Jacob runs through the wall and catches Will. Amy tries to save her brother, but Seth drags her away to escape. Will wasn't going down without a fight. He stabs Jacob in the neck using a scalpel, but for the big man, it felt nothing. It seemingly felt like a mosquito bite rather than a stab wound. Later, Seth and Amy find a way out but are mortified when they see the exit door barricaded with Kayla's body. At the same time, screams of pain echoed throughout the corridors. Amy couldn't leave her brother behind, so she decided to go back and fight. Amy covers up her elbows and grabs a nearby sledgehammer with the intent of using it as a weapon. The two brave souls then follow the direction of the screams in hopes of making it time to save Will. Unbeknownst to them, Jacob intentionally kept Will alive to bait them into a trap. As soon as Amy and Seth remove the tape from Will's mouth, Jacob drills a cutting machine into the older sibling's body. In rage after her brother's horrible death, Amy tries to hit the madman with a hammer. Jacob manages to get the hammer from her and tries to kill her, but Seth jumps in just in time and takes the hit. The two morgue technicians then make a run for it and hide in a series of cat and mouse chases beneath the morgue. Amy brings Seth into a room to stop the bleeding. She then discloses that she walked out of medical school when she realized that death was inevitable. Amy kisses Seth for the first time after noticing that one of the windows leads to ground level. With her small stature, she squeezes out to seek help from anyone outside. But like everything going on that night, Jacob seemed to be everywhere and was always one step ahead. She goes back inside when she sees the God's Hand killer in the parking lot. Later, the two try an alternative escape route. Amy arrives at the door first and tries to open the door while Seth is lagging behind due to the injury he sustained earlier. But then, Jacob stabs Amy through the door while trying to find the right keys. Amy dies in Seth's hand. A tragic end for the lovers that could never be. Seth gets back at Jacob by impaling the large man with the nozzle from a piece of embalming equipment and pumps embalming chemicals into his body, apparently killing him. Seth drives away from the mortuary after escaping through a smashed window. As he comes to a halt to open up the gated entrance, he realizes that not only Jacob is still alive, but he was also in the vehicle with him.